Hey, Dan Harmon.
Chevy Chase.
Chevy Chase's stand-in, John.
Anthony Russo.
Oh, look at this. Hey,
Joe Russo.
Joel McHale.
Jim Rash was cast 10 minutes before we shot this scene.
That is almost not a joke, right?
No, I think we saw more actors for the Dean than any other role.
But when he came in and did it, you were like, "Oh, that's the guy."
Oh, yeah, without question.
Yeah, I mean, he was cast the previous day to this shoot on the set. We were about halfway done shooting the pilot, right?
Yeah.
And we've said this before in a different, but just Jim Rash is like a comedy magician.
Yeah.
Blood from a stone.
Yes, he takes things that were not wouldn't think were funny and makes them
He
funny.
gets some of the worst scripted lines imaginable and does magic.
makes them into funny.
This
If
musical,
you could take a
musical
dump,
cadence to
dump
that. And it's
onto a laptop, onto the Final Draft software.
He is a groundling and a writer, so he hits his marks and he does this shit the same way if you want him to, so that you can edit him seamlessly. But he also he has impeccable comedic timing,
And he has a comedy head.
Yeah.
This was a
this
highly
is
debated
Joe's
shot.
first incredible orbit Steadicam
Steadicam shot.
which required the actors to start by standing still.
Well, we
And
had
then
to,
this is
ended up
probably what
working.
started leading us down the road to killing Steadicam shots on the show. But for pacing and timing, you always want editorial choices. When you're doing a pilot, usually moving fairly quickly, and you don't, or there's a lot of conversation happening on set, which kills your shooting time. And then sometimes you get jammed into making decisions that don't give you that pacing and timing that you need. But it turned out okay.
Yeah.
I like how I'm wearing sweats.
Yeah, that was a
We
big
love it.
debate.
That was
Yeah.
a huge
That was a
thing.
big debate between the studio and the creative team and the network, and some folks thought that you look like a bum. Other people thought it was hip, and I think we were on the hip side. We ended up going with the hip.
Yeah, but that was the first and last.
Yeah, that was.
First and last appearance. And here's John Oliver, the
By the way, the
brilliant John Oliver.
costumes, the brilliant Karen Patch.
Yes.
Let's talk about her for a second. Really, for those of you who don't know her, does all of Wes Anderson's movies, a true genius in the business, and helped us really define these characters, really unique characters with some beautiful choices.
And now we got Sabrina Rosen.
Yes, Sabrina has now taken over.
Who's amazing.
She's amazing as well.
Because I go in there and berate her about what I'm going to wear. I was like, it's going to be this and that, and I need you to go find this. She's like, all right, John.
Yeah, we've been really fortunate in that department on this show.
John Oliver here is, he's,
Yeah, we should talk about John for a minute.
oh my God.
This was our first time working with him, obviously on the pilot. He's a brilliant improviser, and he doesn't do the same thing twice. And you learn very quickly it's probably not a great idea to ask him to try to recapture the lightning just because he did something really funny. You don't ask him to do it again because he just does so many different things.
Yeah.
And he's not a fan of that either. I mean, he's really he's much more comfortable just trying something else.
Right.
You know?
I mean, you think about the mustard stuff and the finale when
Yeah.
you go,
I have a serious man
It was
crush
great.
on him.
I mean, this
me
scene
too.
had really great rhythm and pacing. I think when we were shooting this scene is when we really felt like we had something.
And this scene was used really heavily to promote the series. It seemed to
it's like, that can't be what is it? I forget it was, that was used so much. And it's like, that can't be a
What is it, Dan? I can't
uplifting
inspiring
story.
journey.
Inspiring
that
journey.
can't be an inspiring journey.
Oh, the margaritas are here.
Oh, lovely.
I remember Chevy. This was the first time Chevy did his Chevy thing on the set. And it was I remember worrying about Chevy's a comedy legend, et cetera, et cetera. Do you want this guy coming on your show? Is he going to eclipse things? Is he going to try to murder somebody with an axe? And going well, hey, what would you do in a cafeteria? He's like, oh, I could do any number of things. And he starts doing all this shtick and stuff. And I remember being on the set and trying not to make any noise when we watched this and was like, wow, that's not how I expected that story to end. The guy just starts, he had 150 background people in silent stitches with tears rolling down their cheeks for
With
that.
a hot dog,
Making the hot dog. Maybe it doesn't translate to TV. Maybe you don't look at it and go, wow, that's TV history with the hot dog. But it was an interesting turn in the Chevy legend.
He did a bit that extended into like 30 or 40 seconds that I think is what had everybody in stitches. It was, you know, in a 20-minute show, it was just not plausible for us to use it, but it was brilliant. So you get a little.
It was like
school in
watching a
vaudeville.
magician. Yeah.
So this is the pilot. So we're all like, on one hand, because you'll hear us talking later in later episodes about how, well, we're just learning to work together and stuff. And like the thing about the pilot is you're working on it for a much longer time than you're working on the series. Mm-hmm. So the actual honeymoon triumphs and roller coasters and things, they don't actually happen until episode 101, 102, 103, 104, because that's when you're on a week-to-week schedule. And that's when all of a sudden you're starting to have arguments about like how to land a joke, how to edit a joke, because the time is of the essence. But this is back when we could collaborate and hang out and talk about comedy theory and stuff. Still, it's got its own like thing. Like we. I mean, I remember just sitting with you guys like till, you know, all night, literally all night, like doing one pass of this in the edit bay. And going it's hard to imagine, put yourself in that place mentally of going like, there is no such thing as the show. We have no idea what we're doing. We just shot all this stuff and like putting this thing together. I don't even know what my point is. Just trying to take you back to that.
Well, there's also like, and there was, because it's the pilot, it's like you want to get everything, you want it to be good. Yeah. So we ended up doing a lot of different takes in a lot of different ways,
that's the
because
key.
it was how is it going to be in the editing room?
Every line that Joel has, and even probably 10 times more so for Gillian, there's 1,000 takes, because we don't even know what the show is. We don't even know what the tone of the show is. Is it sarcastic? Is it playful? Is it smart? Is it stupid? Is it broad? Is it niche? You know, and Joel, is he warm?
Are we watering him down? Is he too big a dick?
Is she a bitch? Is she smart? Is she eclectic? It just,
I think you say skank and some of the other.
Yeah, it's just odd when you look at this version of Britta, and maybe other people see it as
even
no
Danny
different
just
at all.
showing up on screen here. I mean, that was a very complicated character to figure out.
You think about it, there's no one.
We had no idea what we were going to do with Abed. Was he a robot? Was he Was he Mr. Spock? Was he?
I always say he is like Mr. Spock or like Data, but not. He serves that same purpose, but he does not that they. But he does so much more in that, you know, with who he is, and it's such a complete character. Not that those guys were not in any way, but those guys were amazing. But he really serves that, and there's nothing like him on television.
There's somebody who tweeted a question that I think is really valid and interesting, which is when you remember the Abed who's outside on those steps, who does that thing of "Am I deaf? Can anybody hear me?" How different that is from the character that emerges that you're looking at toward the end of the series, but. I don't look at that as I look at that as development, and specifically in regards to the fact that Abed in this pilot, he's the character who's most excited about the pilot, and the reason he's most excited about it is because he's never been able to function as a member of a family, because all he knows is media, and so really what it is Abed's sort of like he's I don't know, you almost want to call it playing dumb in the early stages as he starts to reveal more and more about himself and get more comfortable with people. He starts to reveal that he's like Snoopy and Peanuts. He has
his tool set.
He has this otherworldly power because he's so on the ball in different internal ways. Anyways,
it was like 100 degrees during this.
Yeah, I remember. This was like our first day of shooting, right?
Like John Oliver.
So, yeah.
He lost 8 pounds. And
poor guy was in a trench coat
and a scarf.
I've always been struck with that, Dan, what you were just going on about, which is the, you know, it's like making a pilot is so radically different than making the series. It's like making a pilot is really much, much more similar to making a movie, you know?
That's what this is, and that's how we looked at it anyway, which I think makes it a good pilot. It feels like a movie. It feels like a Wes Anderson movie. Well, that's presumptuous to say, but I mean, it feels like a character-driven, grounded, semi-comedic movie.
Right.
Is here. Are you the board-certified tutor?
And then you look at Chevy's wardrobe. That changed a lot.
It did. That, yeah. I mean,
and
Yvette's
Allison's
hair.
changed a lot. Yvette's hair.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a growth to the characters, and you have some time to think about it over 4 or 5 months between the pilot and the execution of the show.
If you see outside behind Joel, this set that we're shooting on, this is actually a location shoot. It becomes a set on Paramount. They recreated this whole room. I hope this doesn't destroy.
It was at the U.S.
But you're listening to commentary.
It's like the Bank of America Trainee Center or something.
WAMU.
Abandoned
A
trainee
big giant
center.
building.
This
that
was during the
completely
recession
abandoned.
for you kids. Remember, the nation had just plunged into bankruptcy. I had a WAMU card in my wallet that was no longer. My bank had just been bought for a second time when we were shooting this. We were shooting the abandoned headquarters of WAMU, and there was a human resources sign in the garbage bin, and it was insane. There were paper clips on the floor. Anyways, but that has no bearing on it. But if you look in this pilot outside into the library, you see different carpeting, you see exterior, you see a slightly different design to the building out there. Very slightly tweaked when we recreated it as a set. Out here, this is LACC's campus. Thank you so much for letting us use you.
LA City College.
Yeah.
The original concept with Chevy was that he was sort of a Bob Evans kind of figure.
Yeah.
Say, heyday in the late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah.
And his entire wardrobe was from that era.
And that's how Bob Evans dresses.
Yeah, we
Yes,
we
yeah.
repeatedly
I
said
I think
Bob
we
Evans.
used some
in the-
photos of Bob Evans and just pulled articles.
In fact, Bob Evans was interested in the role.
Joel's costume was the soccer player, British soccer player.
It was Beckham.
Beckham.
Oh, yeah,
David
yeah.
Beckham.
I think we
Really?
found a photo of Beckham in a sport coat and sweatpants.
And
Yeah.
Yes.
And John Oliver's character was mainly Doctor Who, kind
Yeah,
of.
that's right.
And Allison's outfits
Allison,
changed.
I think we said like we wanted her to be like an Elizabeth Hasselbeck type.
Yeah.
you
Because
know,
in
who-
spirit, her character is sort of Tracy Flick, Reese Witherspoon's character from Election. But, I mean, I say that's not a ripoff of that. I just mean, like, in terms of how the archetype. In reality, she's sort of based on a couple of girls I went to high school with. But in terms of dressing her and in doing her hair and stuff, we arrived at Elizabeth Hasselbeck. Like, I'm kind of...
like a conservatism mixed with the sexuality. They wanted to like find a. But we didn't, we knew who Allison was, and she had a lot of sex appeal. We didn't want to, cloister her, so we're looking for a way to, make her this sort of. She's the antagonist in the pilot, really. When you study this episode, she's sort of she's the most out there character, the most aggressive in terms of her point of view. And then again, once you see what you've got, and everybody starts settling into their character, you start developing that, and she just grew into, part of the family.
Yeah.
But she's her character's a little extreme and a little insane in the pilot.
She was the last major cast member that we cast.
I think even she sat. I mean, the first day we met her was on the first day of the pilot.
Yeah,
It
you're
was
right.
Like, oh, hey.
We knew her the
She
least
wasn't at the
well
table,
by the
really.
time. Exactly. So it was an interesting process with her in this pilot, just sort of like a shotgun marriage. And
She's supposed to be the fly in the ointment in this pilot. She's the reason why Jeff can't let his guard down that much, because she's going to be able to sniff out a fake Spanish tutor when she sees one. She wasn't invited to the thing. She showed up on her own. She didn't end up being this like rule, like she was supposed to be the cop character, the buzzkill, the police officer. The cool thing about the natural thing that happened with that character is, as of Halloween episode, like you start to realize, oh, she's, the actors take over the character, and if you let that happen and keep a loose grip, you get beautiful things like the realization that Annie, is blossoming and is like any 18-year-old girl, is sort of like taking her sexuality for a ride. She's like taking it out to the streets to see what it can do.
I was going to point out here that the speech from Breakfast Club here.
Right.
Well,
Sorry, I talked over that.
No, but that happened on the set.
That was an idea Dan had on the set.
So Danny had to go learn that, and very quickly.
Actually, Edwin felt like you wanted a joke there, right?
Yeah,
And then
Edwin. Edwin said, "Yeah, the normal line there was a little flat," and this is back when I wouldn't go, "What do you mean?" No, I still don't do that. But
Edwin is one of our NBC executives.
He's terrific.
Huge supporter of the show.
He suggested that, and I sort of like, I had Seeger run out because we didn't have Wi-Fi on the set. He goes out, I said, go get the Bender monologue from Breakfast Club on your iPhone and like bring it in, and Pootie memorized it and did it. We did a bunch of variations of that
3
moment.
versions, yeah.
But it turned out that Breakfast Club thing turned out to be one of the funniest parts of the show because of Pootie.
And why was the choice to put John Oliver in safety goggles here?
and a smart car. We had a big debate over the smart car.
Yeah.
Was it too broad?
Well, they're
And again, that's when
all
you're-
over the UK. So
When you're trying to define the tone of a show, and you're just
It's a smart car at the end of the day.
Seats with built-in ball warmers.
You know, bluffs this week are how your people lost the
all of his deliveries just stick in my head, John. Every
Yeah.
time he reads a line, it's got such a unique take on it.
God, I just have such flashbacks of so Joel's supposed to get heated in the scene, and then you have suits all over the place, swarming the set, and everyone's so worried that you're going to make an unlikable character. And I'm not digging on any of them. I'm not saying they shouldn't have been doing that, but it's just like it puts you in such, it's like you want to tell a story, you want your hero to get mad, and then you're like, oh.
But don't get too mad.
Yeah,
But it's not just that. I mean,
I
this
remember
is really
getting
a
really
challenging
frustrated
character.
in that
you
scene.
know?
Yeah.
Also because I couldn't get the line, and it was 150 in that car, but I think I was fucking up the line.
I think this is one of the last scenes we shot, right? Right before we wrapped.
It was, yeah.
I did a little bit of lying to get
Didn't Chevy call us fairies? We're giggling.
You
about
mean
that.
daily? What, you
You know,
fairies?
What happened here was you see everybody in the background in the study room. Okay, so while we're shooting this foreground dialogue scene between Gillian and Joel, everyone in the background has to repeatedly mime and sort of over and over and over again. And it's I guess it can get to be a bit of a drag.
For Chevy. We were just happy to be working. He was a movie star, so he didn't have to do a lot of miming.
So really, this is, if I do say so myself, one of my finest hours. This monologue,
Oh, without
and
a
then Joel
doubt,
McHale.
yeah.
We wanted to, we made sure we got this in one take, even though we do cut around the table. But Joel McHale memorized this thing literally backwards and forwards. When I say literally, because he actually memorizes it backwards. Don't you?
I could do it backwards.
Just and
because
then,
I knew if this speech wasn't good, it was going to be horrible. It was
The whole show was riding on it.
Yeah, it was going to be a disaster.
and part of you dies. Just a little bit.
It's interesting because this is, he's bringing them together, and the character doesn't mean it, but then again, he's not lying, because the whole point of this character is supposed to be, and this is the only thing, casting Joel McHale makes this possible. The character doesn't hate anybody. He doesn't think that anybody's a bad person. He's too self-involved to care enough to judge anybody, and that's what makes it possible for him to just, on command, he can like the Elizabeth Hasselbeck girl. He can decide that she's a hero and tell you why, if that's what he needs to do to get laid.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to do. In that fight, the one motivation through the whole thing is, I might get in someone's pants in 2 minutes after this.
It's interesting to note, Dan, sort of
motivation.
the thing that was the biggest struggle heading into the pilot was Britta's arc. Remember that whole 2 weeks leading up to shooting this, trying to define what he wanted, what she wanted, and and how to keep him in that study room with sort of plot.
Yeah, the Britta character has to shoulder all of the story because she's the thing that's motivating this character, and so there's no room for developing that character. Everybody else gets to go, well, I'm the kleptomaniac, I have Tourette's, well, I was on Saturn. She's just going like, you disappointed me, okay, now you didn't, okay, come back and you can have dinner. And it creates it plays hell with the character. We didn't know who she was, what she's thinking.
Right.
We had so many internal debates. Does she know that he's a bullshit artist?
Does she not?
When does she?
And even through the editing of the pilot, where there was certain subtleties that you could push forward or not that would identify whether she did know or she didn't know. And it was just spent a long time trying to grace that arc. But it's great to watch as we can sit here today and go through all these episodes and track how the show grew and developed and it starts to fall into a very comfortable space of pacing and rhythm and timing. And, just as a director, I sit here and I look at the camera work and that settles down and everything sort of falls into place. Mm-hmm. We always say, Anthony and I joke, is like somewhere around episode 6 or 7 of a first season, the actors sort of take over the set because it's now about they know their characters better than anybody. I can't really go in there and give a note about your character because you guys have thinking in more detail on a daily basis than anybody else about how your character feels or what they think like or what they act like. And it's just really our job to sit there and sort of monitor and come up with ideas for jokes or, and make sure we're just telling the story properly. But
then why do you micromanage everything?
Really?
I'm sorry. You son of a, I'm gonna
can we go back
so...
and God damn you.
No, but that was when doing that. I mean, that's how the way you guided us during this pilot. We would be completely. I think it would just be very bland and weird if you guys were not there every step of the way, helping us and telling us where to, how. It was.
Well, it's the exciting thing about pilots. You have no idea what you're going to end up with, and it's a lot of it. 80% of it's casting. Who shows up. And you honestly don't know how people are going to do with their roles until they get there and they start performing, and then you make adjustments as you go.
We cut a line out of there where Britta says to Abed, he is not qualified to make that diagnosis,
right.
Which, we just cut out. But that should be obvious. He's not qualified to make that diagnosis. We don't know in real life who has Asperger's and who doesn't.
This is another genius Tom and Manish moment here.
Yeah.
The Matt and Kim.
Yeah. Really makes this moment.
Mm-hmm.
Do you use this piano
the story is
music
a little ridiculous, but
we use it. I think in 101.
If you play the beats properly, it doesn't feel ridiculous. I mean, the idea that he ever thought he was going to get all the answers to all the tests, it's just such a dumb thing to ask for.
Important lesson, my friend. You see,
nobody plays a better drunken.
Not since Dudley Moore.
Yeah.
I swear to you on my life, not since Dudley Moore.
Are people trying to teach me things at a school that has an express?
And he's sober.
Give me my keys.
Well, no, I have to keep the car for the lesson. Don't hit me. Please don't hit me. Jeffrey?
Can't imagine, not to kiss your ass or anything just because you're here, but all the people that might have been tuning in for the car wreck effect of Ken Joel McHale act. Being familiar with you from the Soup, they must have been blown away because there's so many turns you have to take. There's all these quasi-dramatic, heartfelt things, and you're angry, you're solemn, you're self-pitying, you're narcissistic. You really. I guess maybe they'd probably seen you in. Had you been in the what's the movie called?
The Informant had not come out. No, Spider-Man 2, the 2 minutes I'm in there.
I remember the casting process with Joel. It's not like he had to come in and audition necessarily, but it's almost more hectic than that, more intensive, because you're basically at that level, you're testing a bunch of different dudes that are they all have kind of claim to the throne, and you're I just remember being at NBC and showing them that Joel could do dramatic work, which
God bless you.
Even though it's a sitcom. He needs to be a character capable of dramatic scenes.
I'm gonna take your clothes off right now.
Watch it.
And it was this scene. It was when actually it was you're all. Oh no, yeah, the jacket thing. Talking to Troy about his jacket. That's the scene. I remember executives in the room at NBC watching it on tape and going, "Oh," just realization.
And in the test, I blew one of the jokes, and they're like, "Thank you." I was like, "No,
you blew one of the dudes."
Well. That was not during the test. That was
right. That was a dumb joke.
Take the tape back.
No, it's fine.
Please.
It was. We could rewind. Aaron was the one that watched the Soup, right? That got you to watch it.
But that's not. We didn't. Your name came up, and I was like, "Oh, I just became familiar with that guy." Okay. I wasn't like, "I want the Soup guy."
You were, and then people were like,
your
Ryan
manager.
Seacrest?
Your manager is a genius. Russ Krasnoff called him and said, "We want Bill Murray, 1983, and the new Bill Murray or something like that." And your manager, you'd think he'd be biased, but he said, "I got the guy. It's Joel McHale."
Oh, I think
so. If you share a manager with Joel McHale's with Joel McHale, that he sold you out that day. He did not mention your name.
Who did he say?
No, I'm
He
saying
said, "We're stumped." God, Bob, wish I could help you. Click. No. I wonder if that's my age or my. I have no idea. I was trying to figure out who said it.
End of the day, this is a beautiful performance.
It's one of our favorite bands, the
Yeah.
88s.
Who is
I had
this?
no idea.
The 88.
Oh, it's great. And you use them a lot.
We do.
Since then.
We like our in-house band. We love these guys.
I had no idea that Joe had a relationship with them. They were like my favorite LA band. Like I just love them.
That was great.
Yeah. And that was
Yeah.
and then the whole episode was an homage to John Hughes, so we felt it was appropriate.
And how great is that? I mean, you can't see it now, but the look of the
Right.
theater, the architecture of that theater, the big
Right.
ramp going, it's great.
Yeah.
They also did the theme song to the show, the 88. Just
That's
for
right.
Those of you out there.
Where do they live?
Yeah.
They live here in LA?
They're in LA. They have a studio in one of their homes,
Yeah.
and we call them up, and they turn stuff around in like 24 hours, and it's genius.
Wow.
From the bottom of a margarita glass, thank you on behalf of all of us at Community.
Bye.